Hey Frank.
Tom, how you doing?
All right. How about you?
All right, Frank Watson and Tom Probasco here with something to say, featuring Tom Probasco, his poetry, his thoughts, and uh, neighborhood dogs or whatever.
Yeah, I've got those too. And Frank Watson, singer-songwriter extraordinaire.
Thank you. Hold on just a second, sweetie.
Oh
In
yeah.
there by that little table, there's a banana waiting for you. Barbara just arrived, my sweetheart, light
All
of my
right.
life.
Good.
Yes. So, Tom, what you got for us today?
Oh, well, I think the last time we were did this, I had started into uh, these chapbooks that of which there are now six, have the overarching name of Something to Say, Poems of This Very Life. And I'd read some out of there. And I've kind of continued in this same book uh, that has a picture there of my sister's blanket tent there at the house we grew up in on Hoop Road in outside of Xenia, Ohio. So I've kind of continuing in there. I was telling Frank uh, back in, I believe I wrote this. I wrote a poem entitled "What Is This Place?" And I was it was a period of time when I think Frank, this was remember the Shah of Iran fled, and there was a taking of hostages, uh, and so the world, the outside world, the international situation. Now I was pretty young then, so there were things I probably shouldn't. I wasn't aware of that I should have been, but this was on the news all the time, so it was like um, it really this taking of hostages was something new to me. Now we'd been through Richard Nixon, and that was kind of a also probably played a role in the way I felt about things. So it kind of continued, from here we're a situation where a president resigns in disgrace, um, and then this would have been a little later. Shah of Iran flees, and then there's the taking of hostages. And in my own life, as I recall, in that time period, uh, my parents, a few years earlier, had divorced. The place I grew up, this place on Hoop Road, had been sold, and there was just this sense of dissolution to some degree. And I, coming out of that, and probably other things, I wrote, "What is this place?" And it goes like this. I've been where day, excuse me, I've been where day to day was new to new. And I've been where tomorrow was deja vu. But what is this place? I think this is somewhere I've never been. If I could leave, I'd not come here again. What is this place? Is this the lonely road of one going insane? Or is this whole globe now on a different plane? What is this place? And there are times, uh, even today, watching, and maybe even more so, I don't know, watching the news. I'm having that feeling again. This really broad unraveling of things in the world, the march of autocracy in the world, possibly in our own country. We don't know. Uh, but it made me think of that. Um, Writing that all those years ago. I'm having that feeling at least as much again.
I, uh, I think that we can safely assume that it's uh, regardless of whether you're going insane or not, the world definitely has.
Yeah, well, and at that point, it is sometimes hard to know. I mean, that's a little strong language, but it's hard to separate. All the separating the personal from uh, the surrounding circumstances, but all of it put together, I think, generated this in my mind. Was I um, again? There were things going on in my personal life that weren't great by then,
Hmm.
uh, and I didn't know entirely where that feeling stemmed from. And now as I realize, oh, it's both. It can, you can have the best, a lot of the things that I was dealing with then long ago have been resolved, but and that's like even a bigger contrast now. That's mostly resolved, but then uh, the world situation. You just anywhere you care to, if you put a map on the wall and throw a dart at it, you're going to land somewhere that's.
Yeah, you're going to have negative headlines.
It seems to be the case. I know the world typically the news doesn't go. Oh, and in good news today we have over here, over here was good weather and peaceable assembly, and
Yeah,
they do cover that a little bit, but that's not the kind of thing I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Another thing that loss, personal loss, as experienced as one goes through their life. Um, I was talking to you about this earlier, and and that's a situation now as I age. Uh, there are people that I know, some Frank, people who are struggling physically, uh, cancer, lung ailments, um, well, various kinds of cancer. Uh, but it got me to thinking when I was, see, this would have been my grandmother uh, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and you don't survive that. So during that time, now there had been other losses, but this was my maternal grandmother.
Wait, you say she survived?
No,
And
nobody does,
that's
and
what I thought.
yeah. So during the time when she was dying,
Yes.
uh, I wrote this. Let me see if I can get back to it here. Oh yeah, very short, titled "The Body Has Parts." And it goes like this: The body has parts, and they wear out and can get sick. That I realize. But it's hard to believe the whole thing would ever leave when the only way you've known it is a lie. And and so that's the it was my grandmother, and so yeah, other people um, had died, but it didn't. In some cases, they were people younger than me. But this was a grandmother, my
Yeah.
mom's mom, and I think everybody kind of has a sense with it, even though everybody knows you're not guaranteed your next breath. But I remember she said when she came down with this, she says, "Oh, I always thought I'd live, as long as my parents, who I think both lived into their 80s." But this was pancreatic cancer, and even today, it's pretty much a death sentence.
Yeah. My only experience with that direct experience was Craig Laughlin,
I've
and
heard you mention him.
yeah, nice fella, real great sense of humor. Had a band that he uh, played kind of folk music. Uh, And I at the time I had lymphoma, and he was coming to visit and cheering me up, and uh, he'd bring me a joint, or a CD or whatever, and just a really great friend. And I was at work uh, in a situation where I had a camera that was on the main library, main uh, elevator at IU Hospital, and I saw him and Lisa, his wife, and they didn't look happy. And when people are in a hospital and they don't look happy, you kind of think, well, they didn't just come here for flu shots or something. And next thing I know, I hear that Craig has a, a death sentence. I and it happened. It went through fairly quickly.
Yeah.
His company uh, fired him. He lost his insurance. Uh, it was just a horrible, horrible thing that shouldn't happen to anyone. And it happened to uh, just a wonderful guy. That was one of the reasons I kept Indiana folk news going,
Yeah.
uh, or indie folk news rather,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Indie
because
film. Yeah.
yeah, Greg Ziesmer was putting together a celebration of life and was trying to get in touch uh, with someone who was a good friend of Craig's, and I had the time and skill set and did some searching and found the guy. And I realized that trying to help musicians uh, get jobs and connect and support them getting the the help that they need. If you're a musician or a poet, that's who you are. That's what you do, and you do it regardless whether you get paid or not. But
Yeah.
if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you get paid.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's your choice.
Right.
Uh, in 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 a pre-technological world, storytellers, poets, musicians had a place in the everyday work scheme of things.
Hmm.
In Ireland, for instance, the bards, the people who could recall the stories, the histories, the dates, and the songs and the poems, uh, the ransom price for them was equal to a king. So
Yeah.
then came the jukebox.
Yeah.
Then came the lowering of uh, people's human interaction and valuing uh, the skill set of the poet in the local community.
In the low. Yeah. So when things move toward an industry,
Yeah, right.
then you get a few wealthy individuals, and of course, some of the wealthy people aren't even the musicians. But yeah, it moves
Right.
from they're the history keepers, the memory keepers.
And
Um,
you lose all that on the intimate level of human interaction, and uh, there are so many gifted really gifted people whose gifts are never appreciated. Some, to some extent, just not used,
Right.
uh, and certainly not to the point that they deserve. Uh, I've known, well, Pat Webb was like that. Tremendous musician, wit. He was so quick and so funny, but he didn't knuckle under to the industry,
Right.
and he just went his own way and damn the torpedoes, and I really related to that because
Yeah.
that was my way too.
Yeah.
So
I remember a story. I can't remember if I was talking to him and got this story or heard it from somebody else. I really don't remember now, but he went to Nashville. Somebody offered him a contract,
right, it was in Nashville.
and he said, if I had signed that contract, you would know who I am by
Yeah,
now. And plenty of people locally, I'll put it that way, uh, knew Pat and his son Chris. Well, and if you go back far enough, when he and Charlotte Daniels, his wife, they were up in New York. There's a Folkway record that
yeah,
was done.
yeah,
Uh, but he wouldn't, he insisted on maintaining, he wouldn't sign away control for what he did.
right.
Um, just like you had that experience. So, I mean, it's just, I remember one time for a brief period of time, you and I and some others, kind of varied who was in it. We called it. I think at first it was just the benefits band. Then you call it the
Full benefit.
full. Then you added full benefits
Well,
band, and
and
that came out of that whole that thing you're describing now.
yeah, that came out of the experience with Craig Laughlin.
Yeah,
I believe everybody in this country should have health benefits.
yeah,
We are not as advanced as primitive tribes, indigenous tribes. If there's health affair, a medicine person or a bruja or whatever in that tribe, they serve everybody in the tribe.
right.
And in our society, we've decided that some people are important and some are not, and it's
All
only
about
the
money.
wealthy that get served or
Yeah,
the privileged. And I know that I'm privileged. You're privileged.
yeah.
We compared to many people.
Oh, yeah. And
For one
more
thing,
seem to fall off into that every day instead of getting better. There's a lot of talk about it, but the industry and their captains are so powerful.
they are extremely powerful.
Um,
It's a race to the top in terms of who gets the most money and
yeah,
power and who
yeah,
owns the most of the world. And it's a race to the bottom because in the process of doing that, they're destroying the world.
yeah,
They
yeah. Goes
uh,
hand in hand and not in a good way.
right. The Bible says you can't serve God and money. And I think we're pretty well along the path of proving that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. You know, at some point, is there going to be one last person that owns the whole earth?
yeah, yeah. Where
Is
does it
going to
stop?
look around and say, "Daggone, I wish I had somebody to talk to." Oh, I screwed up. We all screwed up. We destroyed the very thing that
Yeah,
that made our own lives worthwhile.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I that I, one time I said we were talking about this, Frank, this some years ago, not a long time ago, and I said, money, and you said the love of money, an important aspect of that. And it's kind of counterintuitive. You think if somebody, it's like gathers together a tremendous amount, something, a huge amount. And it's almost as if instead of being sated, saying, okay, it's almost like an alcoholic, I've had enough. It's no, I want more. It's never enough.
Yeah.
And, if you're a billionaire, you'd think, millionaire, whatever, you'd think somebody at some point, okay, I've got enough now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to work that way. It's almost like the more, it's like get hungrier for that instead of sated.
And there there are efficiencies gained by large amounts of capital. Somebody with like Elon Musk
That's
with
who I was.
yeah, yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I'm not sure he has a heart, but he has a good mind for engineering, uh,
Yeah.
and he can take on a project like building a rocket to go to the moon, to take people to the moon and bring
Yeah.
them,
Right.
or take them to the moon and leave them. I don't know. I don't keep up with all. I'm not going to the moon.
I don't want to go and walk in space. That's another service somebody was,
I don't even want to go. I don't even want to go across the street.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's that's there is like armies, uh, uh, entrepreneurs, uh, uh, gangsters. Um, there's a competition for turf,
Yeah.
and if you want to compete, if you want to survive in certain ways, you have to get bigger, and you have to take somebody else's stuff away. It's like monopoly,
Yeah.
uh, and countries have their wealthy people who can take on big projects. Germany's got a lot of great gun manufacturing. I've shot some of their stuff. Good Glocks. There's nothing like a Glock, for instance. Great engineers there, and a great tradition of arms manufacturing. Well,
Yeah.
the United States got some of that. China is getting a lot of it. They are
Who's that?
China,
Oh, John. Oh, yeah.
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 So, so anyhow, if you don't want for uh, your country to be annexed or discovered by another country, um, you have to have enough wealthy people to and enough industry and enough stuff that's probably going to destroy your civilization and kill the planet. But you've got to have it, or else you're going to become Chinese or Russian or citizen of the U.S.
Yeah.
And I love my country, and I'm proud of our military. I served, 4 years, and I at the same time I look at things like agriculture.
Yeah.
There may be one of the hearts of the problem. They're trying to patent all the seeds
Yeah.
in the big seed companies.
Well, there is, and that is all part of, we were talking about music, but when it becomes industrialized, it becomes an industry.
Right.
And that happened. That's what Wendell Berry talks about during I think it's Earl Butts, said, get big or get out, plant fence row to fence row. And these mammoth farms
Yeah.
requiring mammoth machinery
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
the seeds. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
So he said a farm, 80 acres to 200 acres and cared for so that you're maintaining as you live on it, not taking. It's got to be, you have to give back. He had an essay It all turns on affection. Well, if you have affection for a place, you will treat it the best you know how. And learning how to treat that is a thing that small farmers, it was knowledge passed down generation to generation. You lose that, it becomes an industry, just like with anything. It it goes downhill. A few get rich, but at what cost?
Yes.
At what cost? And it's kind of funny. You think, what is the answer? And I think first you have to figure out what are the questions, and you have to, what are the questions? We need to really think about these things in a sustained and serious manner. Um, and that, it all turns on affection. What does that mean? So anyway, when thinking about again the small music, music at a local level, uh, a friend of Julia's, uh, Mike Harding, his dad was Mike's a musician. He doesn't play out, I don't think. He owns the Pixie down in Edinburgh. They have shows. Well, Tim, what's the fellow with the people that played so much at Sycamore, Tom and Tim,
Right. The Wright
the
brothers.
Wright brothers. Yeah, they played there a few times. Anyway, that was at the Pixie, and his dad was a musician. And this was just one more from this something to say number one here. See if I can find. Yeah, there. And this remind when you talked about small musicians just playing here and there. This was one I wrote. Again, this goes back. Well, Sarah's 44. She was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 at the time. Sunday for Sarah and me, a bass and a fiddle and a mandolin, a banjo and guitars. We went to hear them being played on the back porch of an old house being preserved for posterity. You and I and a handful of others on a sunny summer day. And the steps we took that Sunday through the old house and around outside when the band was taking a break, I don't recall having taken before, and I doubt that we'll take them again. And I will not be disappointed if we never better them. And so that, Sarah was probably, I don't know, really young.
Yeah.
But it was Mike Harding's dad, whose name I don't remember, that was playing in that band with those instruments. Don't remember which one he played, but
What
a
a
memory from years ago. Years
lovely
ago.
memory
Yeah.
and a fine bit of writing too, Tom.
No, thank you.
I you know I like the subject matter, and I think that there's a danger for those of us who love words to use too many of them. I'm a fan of haiku
Hmm.
and the succinct style of writing. I when I was younger, I read some like novels or early novels that were very wordy, and I I became after a two or three of them, I became impatient. I
Yeah.
wanted to get to move on, and maybe that wasn't such a good thing even. I know there's some writing that's just so good that you just keep going. You're hungry when you finish a book.
Yeah.
a poem.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's the impact of a short piece. And Tom, my timer just went off. I guess we
Oh,
need to.
I guess we're about to wrap up to keep it at a half an hour. But yeah, just real quick, what you say there is, and you've done this too, you know.
Oh
Oh,
shit!
did it just
I
went
hope I
off?
didn't. That didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Well,